The silence after the accusation is deafening, a fissure running through the carefully constructed edifice of international diplomacy, exposing the raw, brutal calculus of power that dictates the fate of millions. The claim that the United States shares responsibility for the unfolding catastrophe in Gaza is not merely a diplomatic spat. It is an indictment of the global order, a confrontation between stated ideals and brutal realities. When a high-ranking official, a veteran diplomat, speaks out, it shatters the narrative coherence of the conflict, forcing an immediate reckoning with the complicity of the powerful. This moment transcends the immediate military action. It is a deep dive into the architecture of intervention, the moral weight of strategic decisions made in distant capitals, and the uncomfortable truth that geopolitical events are not simply matters of local conflict, but reflections of global power dynamics and historical negligence. We must dissect the layers of this statement, moving beyond the immediate political rhetoric to understand the historical roots, the legal ambiguities, the economic fallout, and the terrifying implications for the future of international law itself. The historical context of this conflict is a labyrinth of competing narratives, where the concept of occupation, self-defense, and existential threat collides violently with the framework of international humanitarian law. To understand the current crisis, one must trace the trajectory from the Mandate era through the establishment of the modern Israeli state, examining how successive diplomatic and military decisions have shaped the current demographic and territorial reality. The narrative of the conflict is not monolithic. It is a tapestry woven from centuries of competing claims over the same land, layered with the trauma of displacement, the memory of massacres, and the relentless pursuit of security by all involved parties. Analyzing the role of external powers requires looking beyond the immediate military objectives and examining the long-term strategic investments, the tacit or explicit support provided to various factions, the shaping of political boundaries, and the prioritization of security over universal human rights. This historical lens reveals that the current crisis is not an isolated event, but the culmination of long-standing geopolitical tensions, where the decisions made decades ago continue to cast long, dark shadows over present-day suffering. The legal and moral dimension of this accusation demands rigorous scrutiny. The term genocide carries profound legal weight, defined by specific acts intended to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Whether or not the term is legally applicable to the events in Gaza is a matter for tribunals, but the moral calculus surrounding the scale of destruction is undeniable. When diplomats speak of responsibility, they are invoking a framework of accountability that demands an examination of intent and action. The failure of international bodies to prevent this scale of violence exposes a critical flaw in the architecture of global governance. The responsibility is shared among those who initiate the conflict, those who manage the occupation, and those who possess the power to intervene. The responsibility of the United States as a major global actor is not merely one of observation but of active participation in the systems that enable or constrain violence. This forces a confrontation with the principle of sovereignty versus the imperative of human protection, asking whether the structures designed to uphold peace are capable of restraining the forces of mass violence when geopolitical interests are at stake. The economic and geopolitical reverberations of this crisis extend far beyond the physical boundaries of the Middle East, creating a systemic shockwave across global markets and security alliances. The disruption to regional stability immediately impacts global energy markets, as the region remains a critical nexus for oil and gas flows. Furthermore, the humanitarian crisis generates massive refugee flows, straining the resources of neighboring states and creating complex migration pathways that destabilize entire regions. For the United States, the conflict tests the credibility of its commitment to democratic values and its role as a guarantor of international law. If the mechanisms designed to protect civilians are selectively applied or ignored, the moral authority of the intervening power erodes, creating a vacuum that other actors are quick to exploit. The economic cost is measured not just in aid and reconstruction, but in the long-term destabilization of a region that holds immense strategic importance. The ensuing diplomatic fallout risks fracturing established alliances and redefining the parameters of intervention, setting a dangerous precedent for future conflicts where the pursuit of strategic advantage supersedes humanitarian concerns. Looking toward the future, The legacy of this conflict will define the trajectory of Middle East diplomacy and the future of international intervention. The current trajectory risks entrenching a cycle where strategic objectives are pursued through asymmetrical means, further eroding the possibility of negotiated, sustainable peace. The challenge ahead is to transition from a paradigm of conflict management to one of genuine reconciliation, requiring a fundamental shift in how international law is interpreted and enforced. This requires a renewed commitment to multilateralism, where the voice of the affected populations is not merely heard but is central to the decision-making process. The future of peace in this region depends not just on military solutions, but on the re-establishment of a shared moral framework that acknowledges the inherent dignity of all peoples, regardless of the political or territorial claims they assert. The ultimate test for the global community will be whether the painful lessons of this catastrophe can be integrated into a new, more just system of international relations, moving beyond reactive crisis management toward proactive, principled governance.